Thank you for participating in this presentation on Pennsylvania Charter School Trustees, Ethics, Open Meetings, and Regulations. This session is presented by the Pennsylvania Department of Education and is an overview of topics related to maintaining legal and regulatory compliance. This training includes topics such as an overview of Pennsylvania Charter School law and other applicable statutes and regulatory requirements, inclusive of the Sunshine Act and the Public Official and Employee Ethics Act. This presentation is for informational purposes only. It is not legal advice and should not be relied upon as such. Schools should defer to their solicitor for legal advice. Presentations of this PowerPoint without the Commonwealth's recording do not represent the views of the Commonwealth or any Commonwealth agency. Charter Board Partners is a national nonprofit that works to strengthen the effectiveness of charter school governing boards. We work with boards at every stage of their life cycle and on a wide range of topics. You can visit our website, www.charterboards.org, to learn more about us and the work we are doing across the country. Since launching Charter Board Partners, board after board has asked, what do highly effective charter school boards do? We conducted research on best practices for nonprofit boards and charter schools across the country and built these standards from our findings and experience. These standards are our framework for effective governance. They are meant to be a helpful organizational tool for boards to use when setting goals, creating committees, and evaluating their effectiveness. Today's webinar will focus only on the 6th standard, but you can read more about all of our standards, follow our blog, and access free resources on the Charter Board Partners website. Today's topic is Standard 6, Maintain Legal and Regulatory Compliance. There are two main components to this standard: minimize risks and meet expectations. When a charter school authorizer grants a charter, it gives the Board of Trustees of that school the legal authority to operate the school in accordance with the promises made in the charter, including the Articles of Incorporation and the bylaws, and all relevant legal requirements. The Charter Schools Board is officially the fiduciary. The entity is held to a high standard of care and entrusted by the public to act in the best interest of the school. The board is accountable for meeting the outcomes described in the charter and ensuring compliance with all applicable laws, rules, and regulations. Too often, boards fall short of fully understanding their requirements as the fiduciary and what it means to meet basic levels of compliance. As stewards of public money, charter boards must adhere faithfully to the duties of loyalty, obedience, and care. Let's take a moment to go over what each of these mean. The duty of loyalty requires board members to give undivided allegiance above their personal and professional interests to the school when making decisions affecting the school. The duty of loyalty is carried out through disclosure of any conflict of interest. A board member must sign the conflict of interest policy annually, disclosing to the rest of the board any known or perceived conflicts of interest or information about him or herself that the board member believes would have an impact on his or her decision-making and oversight. Members must abide by that policy throughout their tenure. Avoidance of the use of the organizational information or opportunities for the individual's personal gain or benefit. disclosure of any transaction between the school and the board member, and disclosure of any business opportunities in which the board member and the school may be interested parties. In addition to the items listed previously, a board member has an additional legal obligation to disclose any violation of the law by the school's officers, employees, or agents that a board member believes has occurred or is likely to occur. Duty of obedience means that board members must comply with all applicable federal, state, and local laws and adhere to the board's bylaws. Board members must remain faithful to the mission and philosophy of the school. Although board members may exercise their own reasonable judgment concerning how the school should best meet its mission, they are not permitted to act or speak publicly in a way that is inconsistent with the mission and goals of the school. The duty of obedience is carried out through thorough examination of the school's compliance with regulatory and reporting requirements and other documents governing the organization and its operations, ensuring that board decisions are within the scope of the school's mission, speaking with one voice after a decision has been made, even if the individual board member voted against it, and, where appropriate, maintaining the confidentiality required for a conversation. The duty of care requires board members and officers to be informed and exercise the care a sensible person in similar circumstances would find reasonable. Example, a situation that requires management of a multi-million-dollar budget in ways that positively impact the public. The duty of care is carried out through use of independent and best judgment, attendance at board and committee meetings and active participation in decision-making, advanced preparation for meetings, remaining well informed about the school's activities and proactively asking management for information needed to make informed decisions, and a thorough knowledge of the school's important issues and how they are being addressed. Policies are the rules and guidelines developed by an organization to help reach its long-term goals. Board policies guide the organization as a whole and help ensure effective charter school governance. In this way, they differ from the various school policies that the board may review, such as a procurement policy or discipline policy, as those policies deal with school-specific activities, and thus are better created by the officers of the school. Board policies supplement and cannot contradict the organization's articles of incorporation and bylaws, as those documents are the bedrock of the organization. Board members vote to approve policies, and once formally approved, those policies are as binding as the organization's bylaws and contracts. In addition to approving policies, the board is also responsible for ensuring that the organization abides by them, because the board and its members hold a fiduciary trust to see that the school functions properly. Important board policies to have in place are board member agreement, code of conduct, conflicts of interest, document retention, FERPA, gift acceptance, non-discrimination, and whistleblower policies. A board member agreement outlines each board member's commitment to uphold his or her duties and details the shared expectations of individual board members and the full board. A code of conduct is intended to provide a guide for the ethical conduct of all board members, officers, and employees to help them identify and address ethical issues and provide a process for reporting unethical behavior. It should provide a framework for developing high standards for professional ethics and conduct, and should comply with relevant laws and the school policies. Additionally, a code of conduct should remind board members of their duty to protect all confidential information. A conflict of interest policy lays out procedures to follow when a board member's personal interests conflict or appear to conflict with the board's interests. For example, a conflict of interest would arise if the board considered entering into a business transaction with a board member. The policy should require an annual disclosure from each board member and officer that he or she has read and understands the policy, has no undisclosed conflicts of interest, and will disclose any future potential conflicts. If a board member does disclose a possible conflict of interest, the other board members should then vote on whether a conflict exists. A board member with a conflict of interest should be prohibited from participating in any discussion or vote on the potential transaction. A document retention and destruction policy outlines procedures to ensure compliance with state and federal document retention policies and laws. It identifies the responsibilities of staff, volunteers, board members, and outsiders for maintaining and documenting the storage and destruction of the organization's documents and records. These procedures aim to reduce the risk that documents will be inappropriately destroyed. Similar to whistleblower protections, document retention and destruction issues can subject nonprofit organizations to penalties under Sarbanes-Oxley, and nonprofits that are required to file IRS Form 990, as all public charter schools in Pennsylvania are also required to disclose whether they have document retention and destruction policies. The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, is a federal law that protects the privacy of student education records. The law applies to all schools that receive funds under an applicable program of the United States Department of Education. A school may not release personal information contained within student education records to a third party unless it is expressly permitted under FERPA. A student's education records include all records directly related to the student and maintained by the school. Records covered by FERPA include, but are not limited to, grades, report cards, transcripts, attendance information, academic appeals, and records of any disciplinary proceedings. Having a FERPA policy in place will help ensure that the individuals who handle student data know their responsibilities under the law. A gift acceptance policy can be used to describe which gifts the organization accepts and whether any approval is required. Gifts such as cash or publicly traded securities can easily be used to further the organization. But some real property gifts or gifts in kind may not be useful to the organization and may result in additional expenses. Therefore, the gift acceptance policy may require that the board review these types of gifts before acceptance. The policy should also clearly state that the organization will not provide advice about the tax treatment of gifts. A non-discrimination policy describes the board's commitment against discrimination on the basis of race, color, ethnicity, religion, national origin, gender, age, disability, sexual orientation, or other protected classes. This policy serves to remind board members, as well as the broader community, that your school will not tolerate discrimination. Whistleblower. A whistleblower policy encourages board members, staff, and volunteers to come forward with credible information on illegal practices or violations of the organization's adopted policies. The policy should specify that the organization will protect the individual from retaliation and identify staff, board members, and outside parties to whom such information could be reported. These procedures are encouraged to ensure compliance with the whistleblower provisions of Sarbanes-Oxley and other applicable state and federal laws. While this generally does not pertain to some nonprofit organizations, it does impose criminal liability on nonprofits for retaliation against whistleblowers that report federal offenses. Additionally, nonprofit organizations that are required to file Form 990 with the IRS, such as charter schools, are required to disclose whether they have adopted a whistleblower policy. As a public charter school board member, it is a critical role to confirm that the school is proactively adhering to the legal requirements set forth by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, the authorizer, the federal and local governments, the IRS, and meeting the expectations of staff, parents, students, and the general public. This includes operating in accordance with the organization's bylaws and reviewing bylaws at least every 3 years. Understanding and following the requirements for charter review and renewal. Keeping accurate records of all meetings and documenting the meetings in accordance with Pennsylvania law. Providing annual training for all board members on the open meetings law and operating all meetings in accordance with that law. And providing timely and accurate filing of annual tax documents. The actions of the Charter School Board of Trustees are subject to the requirements of Pennsylvania's Sunshine Act. The Pennsylvania Sunshine Act requires agencies to deliberate and take official action on agency business in an open and public meeting. It requires that meetings have prior notice and that the public can attend, participate, and comment before an agency takes that official action. There can be expectations to the public meetings requirements if the discussion pertains to personnel or very specific certain legal matters. Any discussions among 5 or more board members are covered by the Sunshine Act and require advertisement and must be open to the public. This includes any conversations and decisions made by electronic means, such as email. The school solicitor typically advises the board on aspects of the Sunshine Act. Please review the resource sheet provided with this presentation on the Department of Education website for additional resources and guidance regarding the Sunshine Act. Members of the Board of Trustees are considered public officials. Because of this, trustees are subject to the provisions of the Public Official and Employee Ethics Act. There are specific obligations that go along with this. Trustees are required to file statements of financial interest by May 1st following each year of service and the year following termination of service. Certain other charter school officials and employees must also file statements of financial interest. Additional information concerning the requirement to file statements of financial interest may be obtained by contacting the State Ethics Commission. Please review the resource sheet for this webinar for more information on this important aspect of upholding your obligations as a trustee. Individual members of a board of trustees have certain legal obligations under charter school law and the public school code, including the obligation to be a good and effective steward of public money, and to provide independent governance of the charter school's administrators. As noted throughout this presentation and in the preceding presentations, trustees have an enormous amount of responsibility that comes with the privilege of overseeing the education of our children. It can be overwhelming for board members to keep track of all that a school has to do to remain in compliance. Ultimately, most of the day-to-day compliance falls with management, but a board must know at a high level how it is doing in this critical area. Many boards who want an independent picture of their compliance practices choose to hire a legal expert to perform an annual legal audit or financial check. The attorney determines laws and regulations to which the school needs to adhere and informs the board on its compliance or lack thereof. The full board should regularly review bylaws and organizing documents to confirm that they are aligned with current goals and operations. Let's take a few moments to refresh our understanding of the Pennsylvania Charter School Law. Charter schools in Pennsylvania were created to provide opportunities for teachers, parents, students, and community members to establish and maintain schools that operate independently from the existing school district structure as a method to accomplish the following: improve student learning, increase learning opportunities for all students, encourage the use of different and innovative teaching methods, create new professional opportunities for teachers, provide parents and students with expanded choices in the types of educational opportunities that are available within the public school system, along with accountability for meeting measurable academic standards. Pennsylvania charter school law defines several types of charter schools, including regional and cyber charter schools. As defined in statute, charter schools are independent public schools established and operated under a charter from the local board of school directors and in which students are enrolled or attend. A charter school must be organized as a public, nonprofit corporation. Charters may not be granted to any for-profit entity. Charter schools operate as their own local education agency, or LEA, including for the purposes of special education and fiscal agency. Authorizers and chartering school districts do not serve as the fiscal agent for charter schools. Regional charter schools are defined in statute as independent public schools established and operated under a charter from more than one local board of school directors and in which students are enrolled or attend. A regional charter school must be organized as a public, nonprofit corporation. Charters may not be granted for any not-for-profit entity. This means a regional charter school will have multiple chartering school districts or authorizers. A cyber charter school is an independent public school that uses technology to deliver a significant portion of curriculum and instruction to its students through the internet or other electronic means without a school-established requirement that students be present at a supervised physical facility designated by the school, except on a very limited basis, such as for standardized tests. Cyber charter schools receive charters through the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Unlike brick and mortar or regional charter schools, cyber charter schools operate statewide. Additionally, students who attend a cyber charter school participate from their homes. A cyber charter school must be organized as a public nonprofit corporation. Additional information on cyber charter schools can be found in the Cyber Charter School Basic Education Circular, or BEC. According to Pennsylvania's Basic Education Circular, or BEC, on charter schools, chartering school districts and charter schools should work cooperatively to ensure that charter schools are operating in a fiscally responsible manner and are providing quality educational services to students. Chartering school districts, or authorizers, should provide balanced oversight that allows the charter school independence but ensures that the charter school students are receiving a quality educational program. Charter schools should provide chartering school districts with sufficient and accurate information for the chartering districts to fulfill their oversight responsibilities as determined by applicable state and federal laws. Charter schools in Pennsylvania are exempt from many, but not all educational mandates. Some of the mandates that charter schools are not exempt from include health and safety, special education, civil rights, student accountability, employee criminal history checks, open meetings, freedom of information requirements, generally accepted accounting principles, and certain provisions of the Pennsylvania School Code. Trustees should be well versed in a basic understanding of charter school law and reach out to their solicitor for specific information, questions, and concerns regarding the charter school law and additional statutes and regulations that may be applicable to charter schools. As we conclude this webinar, here are some questions to think about. Does every member of your board complete a conflict of interest statement annually? When is the last time your board reviewed and updated its bylaws? Do you have updated board and school policies saved in a place where all board members, school staff, and parents can easily access? I encourage you to take these back to your board and discuss areas for improvement. I hope you have picked up some useful ideas in this webinar that can help you feel more equipped to be an effective board member. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this webinar. For more information and for other training topics, we encourage you to visit the websites of the Pennsylvania Department of Education at www.education.pa.gov and Charter Board Partners at www.charterboards.org.